I just gotta wait for this to load. There we go. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, here on this pretty gloomy Friday afternoon. It's been raining a lot in Connecticut from where I'm at, which is kind of odd, seeing as how, it's very odd weather to be introduced with now, given how UConn recently won the NCAA tournament. So it's prevented a lot of action from going on around in my area, because usually, when UConn wins the NCAA tournament, it is a really big deal, and there are a lot of events that are later planned on. Even though I'm not part of UConn, there are a lot of events around in the local area that have been going on. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So what we're going to talk about in the podcast today is three different things. Obviously, there's three segments, as in every single podcast that I do. So in the first segment, we're going to focus on the Los Angeles Lakers and now their recent placement in the seedings, how it could affect them later on. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about Victor Wembanyama again and his Defensive Player of the Year case, because it's already clear-cut he's going to win Rookie of the Year. Now it's just whether or not he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year as well. And then in the third segment, we're going to be doing a recap on all of the NBA games that went down last night. We also have a special fourth segment incoming, so stay in tune for that. I reveal that at the end of every single third segment, so stay in tune for that. So before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. It's displayed below the ticker every single show segment. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the Lakers and their current situation and their playoff hopes, because so far it looks like the worst possible scenario for them is going to happen. And I was hoping that it wasn't going to come to this, but so far I've been proven wrong. And it's not really the Lakers' fault. It's more so the fact that the rest of the teams are really, really close as opposed to that. But regardless, the Lakers have dropped all the way down to the 10th seed. And I said that this was there were numerous amount of scenarios that could have happened. They could have either won out and make it all the way to the playoffs, but that loss to Golden State ultimately set them back and prevented them from even being able to make it out of the play-in. So they are locks for the play-in. And what matters now is whether or not they play to compete against the 1 seed or they play to compete against the 2 seed. And that's obviously going to impact their success going deeper into the playoffs, depending on which team they play in the first round. So right now in the 10th seed, and the 8, 9, and 10 seed, they're tied right now. And those teams are the Kings and the Warriors and the Lakers. Now, those guys have the exact same record for the moment. And it's going to come down to the next 2 games. So in order for the Lakers to actually make it to the 8th seed and not drop down to the 10th, well, which they already are, and not stay at the 10th or not stay at the 9th, in order for them to do that, they would have to win out these next 2 games and hope that either Golden State doesn't win out or the Kings don't win out and they drop 1 game. That is their ultimate hope in order to make it as high of a seed as they can while still being in the play-in. Now, they also have to hope that the Pelicans don't end up beating, let me just see their final schedule and their standings. They have to hope that the Pelicans don't end up winning against they have to hope that the Pelicans end up beating Golden State, and then they end up losing to the Lakers, because the Lakers play the Pelicans as their final game of the season. So if they want to have the best chances of competing in the Western Conference right now, it would look as if they would need to take that 7th seed or that 8th seed from the Kings or Phoenix. And in order for them to do that, they would have to win out, and they'd have to hope that the Kings lose the rest of these games that they're going to play. So the Kings, they play the Suns today at 10:30, and they also play the Trailblazers right after, on Sunday. They play the Trailblazers. So the chances on them dropping a game are relatively high, considering they go up against Phoenix. But that, again, like if they go up against Phoenix and they end up winning, then there is absolutely zero chance that they make it to the 8th seed. So they have to hope that the Kings, they drop one, like at least one, and I think the one that they have the best chance of dropping is against the Suns. And on top of that, the Lakers, they also have to hope that they can win against the Pelicans as well as the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies, they seem like a team, the Lakers seem like they're good enough to sort of beat the Memphis Grizzlies. Jesus, my OBS just paused for a second. I have no idea why, but the Lakers, they look like they have the best odds to beat the Memphis Grizzlies, because the Memphis Grizzlies, they are a bottom-feeding team. They aren't a team that's relatively good in terms of, like, in the standings. They've already been eliminated from the playoffs, and they already have so many players down to injury. However, there is a big but, and that is that there's an uncertainty on whether or not LeBron James is going to be playing tonight against this Memphis Grizzlies team. And that is going to definitely raise a bunch of concerns, because if they don't match up against the Grizzlies, there's a serious chance that they end up dropping this game, making it even harder for them to make it to the 8th seed and like replace the Kings as that 8th seed. Now, looking at the Warriors schedule and the teams that they play to close out the season, they play the Pelicans and they play the Jazz. Now, they play the Pelicans first, so it seems like all three of those teams have a potential to win one game and then drop the next one. So it's all going to be down on whether or not they can win against the bottom feeders, capitalize on that, as well as winning against the big teams. So we're going to have to see if Golden State will have a chance playing against, like, winning against the Pelicans. Right now, the Pelicans they're not going to be playing at home, and the Pelicans still don't have Brandon Ingram in the lineup, if I remember correctly. He's still under an injury, and even though the Pelicans, they did beat the Kings in without having Brandon Ingram, this could spell good news for the Lakers, but it could also spell bad news for the Lakers, because if the Pelicans are good enough to knock off the Warriors, then chances are they're also good enough to be able to knock off the Lakers. And that is going to be a very, very big problem when you look at the seedings. And these are still subject to change, but the Lakers, they want the best chances to avoid playing Denver in the first round, which is what it looks like is going to happen in this in the playoffs. So right now, the Denver Nuggets comfortably hold the number 1 seed after beating the Minnesota Timberwolves the previous day. It was the battle for the 1 seed that night, and Denver ended up coming out on top. So, however, there's still a possibility that the Timberwolves could take the 1 seed if the Denver Nuggets drop the last 2 games, which I don't see happening, because their last 2 games are against the San Antonio Spurs, and they're also against the Memphis Grizzlies. So it's going to be a great matchup between Jokic and Victor Wembanyama. Assuming Victor Wembanyama is playing in this game, definitely we're going to see whether or not he can stop Jokic. And this, honestly, this could make or break for Victor Wembanyama's Defensive Player of the Year case. I'm not going to really talk about it much, because I do want to save it for the next segment coming up, because I really do like talking about Victor and his odds in winning these awards. He's a fan favorite. But regardless, talking about the Nuggets, it doesn't look like there's a high chance that they could drop any of the games coming in later that determine standings. Meanwhile, the Timberwolves, they do have a potential to drop a game against the Phoenix Suns. And the next game that they play is today against the Atlanta Hawks, so I don't really feel too worried about that. However, the Timberwolves, like, against the Suns, against Phoenix, that is a team that they should definitely be worried about, because Phoenix has shown that they can beat the Timberwolves when they're all healthy and when they're all playing well. And another team that you need to look out for is the Thunder. However, the Thunder's chances of being able to retake the 1 seed, given the matchups that I just mentioned, are relatively unlikely, because their final games that they play against the Milwaukee Bucks, who don't have Giannis, and they also play against the Dallas Mavericks. Now, they do have a chance of beating the Bucks, since the Bucks don't have Giannis, and the Thunder, they don't really have a good enough defender that's able to stop Giannis whenever they match up against him. However, the Bucks, for some reason, they seem to play a lot better without Giannis and with just Dame alone than with both of them together. And it's much more apparent with Doc Rivers as the coach than it was when Adrian Griffin was the coach. The Bucks ended up winning 117-99 against the Orlando Magic, who aren't as much of a competent team as the Thunder are right now, but they're still a very good team, and they're still a team that is already in the playoffs for the Eastern Conference. So the fact that the Bucks were able to come off a win against the Magic, it might play into this next game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So there's a lot of complications with the West and the standings that could greatly affect the outcome of a lot of these playoff games. And because again, these standings, they could flip-flop, right at the end of the season, they could flip-flop. And if you are the Lakers, you want to make sure that you have the best absolute chances of winning. So let's go through a hypothetical, and let's say that the Nuggets continue to keep the number 1 seed, because that is the most likely chance. So the Lakers, they need to win out. They'd have to hope that the Kings drop both of their games, and they also have to hope that the Warriors drop both of their games as well. But regardless, the Lakers, they have to win out if they want even the slightest chance of taking that 8th seed to avoid playing the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Now, let's say on the hypothetical that the Nuggets don't have the 1 seed and they end up dropping the final 2 games, and the Timberwolves or the Thunder end up winning their last 2 games of the season to ultimately take that 1 seed. So that's when I feel like the Lakers should question, should we bother even winning out if they see that the Thunder, they end up winning out, and they see that the Nuggets end up losing in their game? Do they bother to try and win out? That is the ultimate question that I think the Lakers are going to have to answer, because looking at their schedule and their standings, so the Nuggets, they play the Timberwolves, their final game is on Sunday, and they play the Hawks today. Now, for the Nuggets, I'm just looking at their schedule again. They also play today, and their final game is also on Sunday at a much earlier time. Now, the Lakers and their game on Sunday is going to be, it's going to be at the exact same time. So, depending on how the game works and how let's look at the Thunder and see when they play. Okay, so it seems that all the games are going to go down at exactly the same time, making it very, very difficult to figure out exactly what team is going to take that 1 seed. So if you're the Lakers, I feel like you're going to have to pay really, really, really close attention to how all the story of all the other games are going before you go into that next game on Sunday. And if it looks like the Nuggets aren't going to end up winning their last game, but it looks like the Timberwolves or the Thunder are going to end up winning their last game after them winning the first 2 games, then I feel like the Lakers, I think it's a better chance that they just lose the last game, so that way they could compete for the 8th seed and have a much better matchup so they could avoid playing Denver, because playing Denver in the first round when you're the Lakers is like a death sentence, given how they got swept by the Denver Nuggets last year, and it seems like, the Nuggets are going to repeat as champions again. So that is the nightmare scenario for the Lakers. So I think the approach for them should be to take it 1 game at a time, but they absolutely without a doubt, they have to win against the Memphis Grizzlies. So, LeBron, you got to go out there. You got to perform. It is absolutely needed. The Lakers need you in order to even have a chance. So, LeBron, he has to play this game. It is like, so the uncertainty on whether he's going to play, it will be really, really bad for the Lakers and their chances. So he has to play this game. Absolutely has to. But those are all the scenarios that could go down for the Lakers and their playoff hopes and their playoff scenarios. So with that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now I will now be going into the second segment where I talk about Victor Wembanyama and his Defensive Player of the Year chances and why my opinion on his chances have sort of changed. So I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we're going to be talking about Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert and the DPOY race and why my opinion on who should win the award has changed from Rudy Gobert to Victor Wembanyama. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, as well as the link displayed below the ticker. On every single show segment, it's the exact same. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and I can explain why my opinion on the the Defensive Player of the Year race has somewhat changed and why I think Victor Wembanyama deserves to win the Defensive Player of the Year as opposed to Rudy Gobert. Now, you guys might remember from previous podcasts that I've talked about the Defensive Player of the Year before and how Victor Wembanyama, he has the total and counting stats as opposed to Rudy Gobert, who has the defensive impact around the team, and that's sort of the reason why Rudy Gobert is going to win the Defensive Player of the Year award as opposed to Victor. But this might just be recency bias. After watching a lot of the recent games that Victor has been playing, my opinion has changed a lot as opposed to who I think should win Defensive Player of the Year when talking about Defensive Player of the Year. And I think it should be Victor Wembanyama now instead of Rudy Gobert. And I'll explain exactly like what the moment was that made me realize that. So in the matchup against the Nuggets and the Timberwolves, Rudy Gobert allowed Nikola Jokic to drop 41 points. Now, that is a lot of points for someone to drop on you, especially since you're the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, when you're thinking of Defensive Player of the Year, you're thinking of someone who is able to stop someone who is as dominant as Jokic. Now, Jokic is really, really, really dominant, and it's very, very difficult to stop him. So it's not necessarily that, like, it's no guarantee that your defense is going to be enough to stop somebody of that caliber. However, with the Spurs now matching up against the Denver Nuggets in this next game that's coming up, we have a really good shot in seeing Victor Wembanyama match up against Nikola Jokic, and we can see how Victor holds his own against Jokic and how well Jokic is going to play against him compared to how well he played against Gobert, where he ended up dropping 41. So if Victor Wembanyama is able to hold Nikola Jokic to not scoring that many points and is able to hold them to having a relatively slow offensive game, there is a possibility that a lot of the voters might change their opinions on Rudy Gobert and whether or not he even deserves the Defensive Player of the Year, and they'll give it to Victor. And there's a chance that he could be the first rookie ever to win Defensive Player of the Year. There's not been a single rookie in the history of the game that has won Defensive Player of the Year, and he has a very legitimate shot. If he can hold Nikola Jokic to 20 points on some really bad shooting, there is a chance that the opinion on whether or not he's the Defensive Player of the Year could switch in the voters. Now, we're just talking about the voters here, so let me talk about myself and how my opinion changed. So in that matchup, when they were playing against each other, the rest of the team, when they see Rudy Gobert, they don't really get that scared. Like, they don't get as afraid of going up on him as I thought they would, or like given how great of a defender Rudy Gobert is, it doesn't really seem to affect many people going at the rim. And let me just go ahead and pick up the box scores real quick and their starters and because there is a specific player that I do want to mention. Yes, Christian Braun on the Denver Nuggets. He ended up dunking on Rudy Gobert in this game, like straight up dunking on him. Now, when he was playing against Victor, he had a wide open layup, but he didn't go up. He didn't go up direct, and Rudy Gobert was directly under the basket when he went up against the Timberwolves. He went up directly over Rudy Gobert and straight up dunked on him. Victor Wembanyama was behind him. He had a whole lane to the basket, and he decided not to dunk the ball. Instead, he decided to kick it out to Michael Porter Jr., who ended up making the three. So it was a great decision by him in the end to not go up, but it was a wide open layup. It was a wide open lane to the hoop, and he had it. He was directly under the basket, and he had it. But because Victor Wembanyama was like ready to go for that block, he didn't go up on him. And I've started to see that way more now since the All-Star break with Victor Wembanyama. Since then, he's averaged around 4 blocks per game, as opposed to over the regular season where he's averaged 3.6 blocks per game, which is ridiculous, and it's insane the amount of blocks he can get in a game, in an NBA game, as a rookie, and it's only going to get better, given how much better he gets as he plays more years in the NBA. But it's the fact that there was a whole 3-on-1 fast break when the Spurs matched up against the Memphis Grizzlies. There was a 3-on-1 fast break. Victor Wembanyama was sitting in the paint, and every single one of the players that was on that fast break refused to try and go up over him. They would have rather stay at the 3-point line and take that 3-point shot. And that is not an individual stat you can track. That is impact. And I said before that the Defensive Player of the Year award, it's down to impact and how impactful a player's presence is as a defender. And there's just that impact that Victor has. It's not the same that Rudy Gobert has. Like, Rudy Gobert's impact is making the team better defensively. But him individually, players just aren't as afraid of going up on him as they are as going up on Victor Wembanyama. And I feel that alone just completely changed my opinion, because here we have grown NBA veterans, grown NBA athletes that are scared to go up on him. Even if he's like somewhere in the vicinity around the rim, they don't want to go up. But if it was Rudy Gobert, they would have no problem going up. And you can see that difference when you watch Victor play and when you watch Rudy Gobert play. So that impact that Victor has had recently when defending the rim, I think it's way more than the impact that Rudy Gobert has, despite the team success that Rudy Gobert has had and the defensive success that the team as a whole has had. Because I mentioned previously, it's not just Rudy Gobert that is the reason why the team is ranked so high defensively, even though it's a very odd coincidence that when he was on the Jazz, they were ranked number 1, and now when he's on the T-Wolves, they're also ranked number 1. It's also a combination of Anthony Edwards, who is a very, very good defender, and he's not one of those lazy defenders out there on the perimeter that has sort of helped them. So it might be more so the culture that Rudy Gobert brings around his defense that impacts his team to playing better on the perimeter on the defensive side of the ball. Whereas Victor, you literally put him under the rim, nobody is going to go up over him. Not to mention, Victor is also very, very good at blocking a three-point shot. He is probably one of the best three-point shot blockers that the league has seen, because is not really a common thing to be able to do, to block a three-point shot. So I have a feeling that once his career is over, he's going to finish his career with the most three-point shot attempts blocked ever in NBA history. Whatever ESPN stat that is, whoever holds that record, I have no idea. But if there was an ESPN stat that he was going to break, it's going to be that one, along with so much more. But that sort of like changed my little perception on Victor and his Defensive Player of the Year. And it's all going to depend on whether he even plays this game against the Nuggets, and if he plays well against these Nuggets, and if he has that same impact on the defensive side against these Nuggets. If he's able to hold Nikola Jokic on his own, then I really don't think there's going to be any argument for him being the Defensive Player of the Year over Rudy Gobert. I really don't think there's going to be much of an argument. Especially, because that was the reason why he already won Rookie of the Year. Because he matched up against Chet, and when he matched up against Chet, he completely outplayed him, as well as was able to get the win. Even though the Oklahoma City Thunder are a much better team than that Spurs team. So, with that in mind, depending on how he plays against Jokic, it could be the make or break for his Defensive Player of the Year award. So, that's my take on it, and with that, we are out of time for this second segment. So now I will be going on into the third segment, where I give a quick recap of all the NBA games that went down last night. So stay tuned after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the all the NBA games that went down last night, as well as the big stories that are going down. Now, I already talked about, the Lakers and, their standings and what could happen, but there's still few more teams that are undecided in their standings and what is available to them and what is their potential, what's their ceiling and what's their low point. So I'm just pulling up the box scores right now just to do that real quick. Just give me 1 second. If the box scores would load, that would also help me. Jesus. All right. So there were a lot of important games that went down, and the first one that I think is really important is the Knicks going up against the Boston Celtics. The Knicks ended... Okay, there we go. Quick edit. My bad. I have no idea what just happened. The service around here, the internet service is really, really bad. I guess it's because, it's raining for some reason, and it's it almost kicked me out of OBS. So my bad for all of you guys that in that stream and what happened, but I think we're back. I think, Jesus Christ, the Wi-Fi is just not helping me in this case whatsoever, so that's fantastic, isn't it? But, yeah, so having a little bit of difficulties with the server, and it's also, Jesus Christ, it's also affecting my phone, so I can't even, look at the box scores if I even want to, but I still have enough that I can talk about. So regardless, they matched up against each other. Now, the Celtics, their coach, they brushed this game off, if that makes sense. They sort of wanted to defer from talking about this game. They wanted to, they said, the exact quote, their head coach said that, the Knicks were a much more desperate team. And that's kind of a disrespectful thing to say, because it's the playoffs are inbound, so it's why wouldn't a team really be that desperate to try to beat the number one team in their entire conference? So it really seems like these guys, the Celtics, they were trying to just brush this off. Yeah, sure, they were going to win this game because they were the team that wanted to come out on top. They were desperate, and I'm any team is going to want to come out on top when they're going against the number one seed to sort of show them that their dominance, it can be tested. And it's why wouldn't you expect that going into this game? And why are you trying to brush it off as if it's not something to really worry about? I find it relatively odd that they would bother trying to do that. It just seems like a bad look for the Celtics, especially when you look at the box scores and you see that not many people really played that well on the Celtics side. So Tatum ended the game with only 18 points. Drew Holiday ended the game with only 7. Jaylen Brown ended the game with only 15. and Porzingis ended the game with only 14. Now, keep in mind, all of the players that I just mentioned, they're getting a lot of money from the Boston Celtics. And them playing this well, again, it's not really helping them. Now, the Knicks, on the other hand, they had Jalen Brunson go absolutely ballistic, dropping 39 points. DiVincenzo ended the game with 17. Isaiah Hartenstein ended the game with 11 and 13. Josh Hart ended the game with 16 and 16. And OG Anunoby ended the game with 12. So, along with Bojan Bogdanovic coming off the bench and scoring 14 points. So, overall, the Knicks, they played better, they shot better, they defended better, they did everything better than this Boston Celtics team, and they really look like they are the team. Like, if there is a team that has a chance of competing against them, this is the team. And I really, really have high hopes for this Knicks team to make it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. And assuming how Boston plays, if they keep their dominance up, then maybe they'll come out on top. But the Knicks have shown that they can beat the Boston Celtics. They have shown that it's possible. So, of all the teams that the Boston Celtics should really be worried about, I think it's the Knicks. Even without Julius Randle, where, I mentioned previously, Julius Randle, he was supposed to come back from his injury, but he ended up re-injuring himself again, and that ultimately played into whether or not, he could come back, and it turns out he's not going to be able to come back. But regardless, they've seemed to show that they can hold it together in this game, especially against the Celtics. So imagine if they bring Mikal Bridges over to the Knicks. That would crush my heart as a Nets fan, but I know he would probably be a lot happier playing with his former teammates. And imagine if Mark Armstrong gets drafted to the Knicks. Oh my gosh, it would literally just be Villanova basketball everywhere on that Knicks team, and that would be amazing. So I can't wait. But next game on this list is the Warriors playing against the Blazers. Now, the Lakers, they kind of needed the Warriors to sort of drop this game in hopes of being able to make their lives going into the 8th seed a little bit easier, because now they have to sort of wait to see if Golden State is going to drop the next 2 games or if they're going to win out the next 2 games. And that could play a really big problem into the seedings, because the Warriors, they also have a chance of moving up to that 8th seed and avoiding playing the Denver Nuggets in that first round. So judging, it's the same story with the Lakers, since they have the same record. They have to hope that they win out. They also have to hope that the Lakers drop a game and the Kings drop a game in order for them to move up to that 8th seed and hopefully avoid playing the Denver Nuggets. Again, however, there's a possibility that the Nuggets might not even get the 1 seed, and depending on how the standings go, they might not even have to play the Denver Nuggets if they stay at the 10th seed and if they win out. So that's going to obviously affect their chances, but I think the Warriors' best chances are to win out, so that way they could avoid playing the Lakers. I think if they play the Lakers, they're going to end up losing. Now, I know they won the previous matchup, but it took a historic performance from the entire Golden State Warriors team and Anthony Davis not being in that game for them to win. So the chances of them beating the Lakers in a series, not entirely sure. And it's all about matchups in the West. And that's going to be the team that is able to get the best matchups going forward is going to be the team that ends up winning. And so far, the Nuggets, they seem to have a great matchup for anybody that they go up against. Except the Mavericks, honestly. The Mavericks, they are the team that could see it, they could probably beat them. But regardless, the Blazers, they ended up losing 92-100 to the Golden State Warriors, and Steph Curry ended the game with 22 points. Kuminga ended with 19. Chris Paul in the starting lineup ended with 8 and 4. Andrew Wiggins ended with 15, and there was no Klay Thompson in this game, but it wasn't really that much of a problem. So really unlucky for the Lakers that the Warriors couldn't end up dropping this game. It's just very unlucky for them. Chris Murray, ended the game with 14 points. Scoot Henderson ended the game with 18 and 12. Jabari Walker ended the game with 17 and 16. DeAndre Ayton ended with 25 and 11. So, great performances for the Blazers. It's just unfortunate that they couldn't end up winning in the end. And Scoot Henderson shot a horrible 7 of 20 from the field, which definitely hurt this team and their winning odds. So it's like they hoped to win this game. Scoot Henderson was the player and the reason why they didn't. The Bulls ended up beating the Pistons 127 to 105. Not really much that needs to be talked about with this game, given how, like, the Bulls, they're just a better team than the Pistons. While the Bulls, they might be in the mid-tier of the Eastern Conference, they're still a relatively good team. Vucevic ended the game with 27 and 11. DeMar DeRozan ended with 39, almost dropped 40 points. And let's see, Kobe White ended the game with 18 points as well. And that was basically like all the important scoring that came in from the Chicago Bulls. The Pistons, they ended up losing, and I can't believe I said beating, excuse me. I don't know what that was, but Marcus Sasser ended the game with 20 points. And Jalen Duren ended the game with 20 points and 11 rebounds. So overall, like, coming in from the Pistons, it was basically just those two guys doing all the work, and the rest of them couldn't make that same production since they got blown out by 127 to 105. So this is by far the worst Pistons team ever in terms of record, and arguably the worst NBA team ever, given how they literally broke the single-season record for most consecutive losses in a season. So no one would have expected the Pistons to get over 10 wins, if we're going to be frank, and it really just shows like where this team is. Now, the Jazz and the Rockets, they matched up against each other, two teams that are already eliminated from contention. Both of them are they're tanking, so it kind of cancels out because, they're both relatively bad, so they're on that same skill level. So it was a really good game. The final score was 124 to 121. The Jazz ended up winning. Now, Luka Samanik ended the game with 22. Keontae George ended the game with 20. And there was no Lauri Markkanen in this game, so I guess they sort of they allow him to rest for the rest of the season. Talon Horton-Tucker ended the game with 16, and Bryce Sensaba ended the game with 17 as well. Now, on Houston's side, Fred VanVleet ended the game with 42 points. It wasn't enough, however, for this game. He also ended with 7 rebounds and 7 assists. Amen Thompson ended the game with 15 points and 10 rebounds. And that was basically all the important scoring coming in from the Rockets. Unfortunately for them, they got eliminated from play-in contention a little bit earlier in the season. And it really is looking rough for this Houston team. They need Sengun in order to produce, and they haven't had him for a majority of the season, given how he was injured. Well, the latter half of the season, I should say. Excuse me. So, the Pelicans, they ended up matching up against the Kings, as I mentioned previously, and they ended up winning 135 to 123. So, the Kings lost in a blowout, and now this is sort of paving the Lakers to be able to get that 8th seed, because they're going into Phoenix tonight. And they're coming off back-to-back games, and it's a lot more difficult for a team to win back-to-back and play back-to-back as opposed to getting a day to rest. It's just especially after losing. So this is the perfect opportunity for the Lakers to come in and steal that 8th seed. It's a perfect chance. They have the right of way in this scenario. And depending on how it goes, we have no idea how it's going to go, but depending on how it goes, maybe they can take that 7th or that 8th seed. But it's very, very, very close. Now, looking at the box scores, De'Aaron Fox ended the game with 33 points, playing 41 minutes. Sabonis ended with 18 points and 10 rebounds. Harrison Barnes ended with 22 points. And Keegan Murray ended the game with 19 points. And that was basically all of the scoring that came in from the Kings. They played very, very well, but the Pelicans, they just played a lot better. CJ McCollum ended the game with 31 points, along with Zion, who also ended with 31 points. Trey Murphy III ended with 27 points, and Valanciunas ended with 13 and 10. And coming off the bench, Jose Alvarado, Grand Theft Alvarado, he ended the game with 14 points, and overall, just a better shooting performance and a better three-point shooting performance they showed than the Kings, even though the Kings shot 42% from three. And the Pelicans, they shot 55% from three. And they just played a lot better. This was a very high-scoring game. The offense was going ballistic on both sides. So with it, it was just too much for the Kings to be able to handle. And with the defense struggling, that means that going up against the Kings, coming off of back-to-back, it is going to not the Kings, going up against Phoenix in a back-to-back, and their defense allowing this amount of points for the Pelicans to drop on them, it's not looking good. And it's looking even better for the Lakers because it means they could steal that 8th seed. But with that, those are all the games that went down yesterday, and therefore we are out of time for this third segment. So now I will be going into the fourth segment where I talk about Bronny James and the NBA draft yet again, because there is some insight, some NBA insiders had some things to say about Bronny James that I didn't really like, but given how, I am a LeBron fan, obviously I'm not going to like it when people are criticizing my glorious Kings, glorious offspring, But regardless, jokes, there were some things that they said that I thought was interesting and I wanted to talk about, so I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back to the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about Bronny James and the possibility of him being drafted, as well as what NBA insiders believe and the reason why there's a chance that he could get drafted. So a lot of NBA insiders, according to some of these sources, they really did not feel that confident that Bronny was going to be drafted. And they previously said, I'm just reading it right now, that the only reason why he hasn't been, he would be drafted is the fact that he is LeBron James' son. And so they're basically saying that if he wasn't lucky enough to have LeBron as his father, that he wouldn't even consider to be in the NBA draft, and he wouldn't even be picked for the NBA draft, despite all of the things that he's shown in his college years, which wasn't really that much. However, there were also insiders that believe his defense is very, very valuable for an NBA team, and he could bring that value right now. So there's a little bit of mixed opinions going around with Bronny James, so I might as well give my own. I think that the insiders that believe that he's only picked because of LeBron James is right, but partially right, because the way that they were portraying it, it was as if he was lucky that LeBron James is his father. That, like, they sort of gave off the impression that he's just privileged like that to be able to get drafted. And I don't think that's entirely true at all, because when you look at the other side of the coin and what other insiders think, they also think that his defense could be very valuable to a team right now. So it can't just entirely be that LeBron James is his father as to that's the reason why he's getting drafted. And the reason why I said it was because of his father was because they both want to play with each other. So the teams are most likely going to assume, well, okay, if we draft Bronny, then that means we'll get LeBron James. And maybe that is true, but that might not be true now, given the new information that I just got with Donovan Mitchell. Now, if the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell cannot agree on a contract extension, then there is a possibility that Donovan Mitchell might request a trade. And one of the guess which team is in the front running to get Donovan Mitchell? The Los Angeles Lakers. Now, this might be just Laker fandom and Laker propaganda, where it's because in the off season we always see jersey swaps of ridiculous players that Lakers fans think they're going to get and end up not getting. And we've seen that trend a lot, especially after LeBron signed with the Lakers. So there might be a chance that is just propaganda, but there's also a chance that it might not be propaganda and that it's a possibility. So if the Lakers have a legitimate shot of winning with LeBron, I don't think that's going to compel LeBron to want to play with his son. Might compel him to try and trade for his son, but I'm not entirely sure if he's going to just hop ship and go to wherever his son is, depending on which team drafts him. So if that does happen, not really sure if that'll happen, if it's possible that Donovan Mitchell doesn't sign the extension, then maybe there's no guarantee that LeBron will abandon ship from the Lakers. But that's sort of the thought process that a lot of teams are going into when they're drafting him. Now, is he privileged because he has LeBron as his dad, and that's why he's declaring for the draft now? I do not think so. I genuinely don't, because the NBA is a league where only the best of the best play, and you're not going to get drafted if the scouts and the GM thinks that you cannot bring some kind of value to an NBA team. That's just not going to happen. And given how some insiders think that Bronny's defense is going to be impactful, I don't see why people would say that, the reason why he's getting drafted is because LeBron's his father. It's not solely on that reason, the way that they were making it out to be. And I just think that's incredibly disrespectful, especially since, Bronny just came off of cardiac arrest, and he, there's obviously still going to be questions on his game, but it's not like he can't improve going into the NBA. I think these insiders should sort of take it as Bronny playing the game the right way. He's taking advantage of the situation that he's in, because, he obviously knows that, with LeBron being his father, that he has a lot more incentive in being able to declare for the NBA draft, more so than a lot of other players his age would. So I see this as him taking advantage of an opportunity to be able to generate a lot more income, because, becoming a rookie means you're getting paid a lot more money than if you were to be getting paid in college right now with NIL deals. So I see this as him taking advantage of an opportunity more so than him being privileged, and how certain NBA insiders want to make it seem. And again, if he didn't have such good defense, he wouldn't even be considered for this NBA draft. Now, you also have to look at it from the other perspective, to where, if he wasn't LeBron James' son, I definitely don't think he should have declared for the draft. In my personal opinion, I wasn't expecting him to do it so soon. I would have expected him to wait at least one more year to sort of develop his game in college before he goes into the NBA. But that's not the side that he decided to take. So we'll see if this becomes like, a smart move for him or just a bad move later. But those are just my opinions on what they've had to say. And I find it really odd how, it's one half of insiders that are saying, he could have value to a team. And then there's another half that's saying, oh, he's only being considered because LeBron is his dad. And I think that's really unfair to him. And that's really unfair to a lot of these college players who have somebody, like who have some relative in the NBA, to where it seems like they're much more privileged than the next guy up. And that's not how it works. Like, you cannot be privileged to make the NBA. You genuinely have to be a prospect that a lot of scouts would want on your team. That's just my opinions on it. But with that, that is the end of the podcast. It's a little bit of a shorter podcast than usual, but that's all I wanted to talk about. So with that, thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review, leave a like. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And before I end off the segment, I'd like to remind everybody to please go and use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment to get your comments recognized. The link is displayed below the ticker, as I mentioned, podcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself and you guys. And that's the end of the show segment for now. I will be back on Monday to recap all the news that happens over the weekend. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit.